All right. How's it this time? We're gonna try it all over again. I'm not doing the whole wine section again, but I'm gonna do the brief overview of the wine for people. Guys, if you want to check the wine, there's actually the last Periscope was pretty much all about the wine, but we got some pretty good sherries here. I just really want to emphasize that this is super refreshing. Palomino Fino, super refreshing. Highly recommend it, especially in the warmer months. This Amontillado, okay, Amontillado in general. Make sure you get a dry one, okay, because they have really crappy sweet stuff. This is so good. It's so good. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't just carry over when I changed ranges, but if it's not working right here, it's just not going to work anywhere. But guys, we've been having some real problems with the internet connection here. Ever since I moved here, a little bit into me moving here. We've had a real hard time with the Wi-Fi working, and then just a couple months ago, the data started to cut out in this location. So, all right, we got a lot of stuff to talk about, and if I keep drinking this Amontillado, it's gonna be a lot. All right, so let's talk about. I got some big stuff. Okay, I want to talk about the big stuff first. God, there's just so much. There's so much little things here. Okay, the biggest thing I think that we have to talk about in terms of the news. SEAL Team 6, right? SEAL Team 6. So this guy, CIA person allegedly, Alan Parrott, is disclosing a shit ton of stuff about Obama, Biden, and how they sent 152 billion to Iran. You guys remember that from Trump's first term, right? Or when he was running for president for his first term. The big stuff about the big pallet of money that Iran received for closing down their nuclear program. But he was talking about how $152 billion was given to Iran. And apparently, according to this CIA guy, CIA whistleblower, Alan Parrott, I'm not going to get into the esoterics of his fact that his last name's Parrott. Some people have been looking into that. But that Osama bin Laden wasn't killed. And I have to be honest, I've been suspicious about this for a while. And I think some of you guys have heard me talk about this in regards to somebody on Twitter who is big, loudmouth conservative. This isn't really, I know this pisses off people because people want to hear that, how do I put it? Somebody is on your side and, fuck the libs, so to speak, or whatever. And they're a Navy SEAL, right? A former Navy SEAL. And their big thing is that they killed bin Laden. Now, I have to tell you, yeah, Rob O'Neill. I have to tell you guys that I have been suspicious about this guy for a very long time. And I know that I understand I appreciated the correction. I understand that the SEAL Team 6 that was killed, that had like helicopter crash, which we're going to talk about in a minute because it's very relevant, that was involved with the bin Laden raid, so the whole team died but him. Now, somebody corrected me and said he was part of like a separate team that was also involved in the operation. It's like, okay, fair enough. But I'm sorry. You have to ask yourself why an individual why he would not only survive but thrive. It's not really in the nature of these professional operators. And actually, they get a lot of hate from other people who are in special forces to sort of flaunt this stuff, especially when it's like very clearly a team-led issue. But this guy, Rob O'Neill, he gets a massive, massive platform, okay? Book pushed everywhere. And so what happens is that these people they get promoted because they will attract people maybe on the right who are going to trust him. And then at a certain point, he's going to maybe change tack, right? And say, I don't support this. I don't support this. There's a way of kind of controlling the opposition. But I'm just saying, like, I don't trust it. I never trusted him. I don't think that his behavior, he acts like somebody who's been bought. I'm just saying, he acts like somebody who's been bought. Um, we got one of our other favorite people who used to be in our corner, the big Cernovich himself, wearing a little, hippie band on top of his head, whatever the fuck you call that. Another person who just gotta call it out. Gotta call this shit out. You gotta call it out. It's very, very obvious. One week he's like, Trump's now won the election. Next week, Trump's not winning anymore. Okay, I have talked to you guys about left hand path and right hand path multiple occasions. I really want to emphasize this, that what he's doing is he's harvesting energy from people. That's what he's doing. Outrage cycle, harvesting energy. That's it. So I don't know what happened exactly. I don't know what deal was given, but he sold it. He sold himself. And he's doing the classic thing like, I'm so high consciousness now. Sorry, dude. There's zero high consciousness people who spend every fucking day on Twitter generating outrage. There's no high consciousness person that exists in that environment. So if you're doing that, then you're not in it. You're not in it. But whatever. Point here is that aside from Rob O'Neill, hey, maybe death threats got to him. Guerrilla mindset, guerrilla mindset. I would respect him entirely if he just decided to say, I'm done with this stuff. If he said, I will take a payout to shut up, and he took that money and he went and changed paths, I would respect that. Because if he doesn't, I understand you have a family, maybe you're tired of the heat, but that's not the thing for him. He always wanted the attention. He always wanted the fame. I don't buy the safety shit. That's bullshit. It's nothing to do with his family's safety. It has to do with him getting his attention fix, his fame. He didn't want to be somebody in some corner of the internet that was telling truths if that meant that he was going to be pushed to the side. He wanted to be somebody who was breaking news. You have to look at Cerno to find out what's going on. That's it. That's the psychology. So, whatever. I don't have a lot of respect for moral cowardice. I don't have any respect for it, actually. And I especially don't have respect from people who, built their reputation on the opposite. Right? You build your reputation on the opposite and you sell out. It became exactly what he hated. But you know what? People got to wake up at some point. They got to wake up. There's tons of conservatives who still follow him. They like the outrage. They're addicted to it. Whatever. It's not a big deal. Anyway, so what? So back to, aside from Rob O'Neill, all of SEAL Team 6 dead. And this is the whole thing, that this was covered up and that bin Laden actually wasn't killed. There was no burial at sea, which of course is not even Islamic. And that he was in Iran. And that was the whole thing with Iran. Now, of course, Trump knows this shit, which is why he's focused on Iran. And which is why he's dismissed the whole photo. You have the photo, everybody's there. They're making some big decision. It's funny. The other week, we had the whole thing with, like, is Trump actually in Walter Reed? And you had all these lefties start to ask these questions. And Loki pointed out, he's like, how do you know that what you see in this picture actually means anything? The famous picture of, Obama deciding to take out bin Laden. Such a brave leader. He was going to take out bin Laden. We have no idea what they were looking at. We have no idea if that picture was staged at all. But what we do know is that $152 billion were sent to Iran. And we know that bin Laden's body was thrown out in sea for no apparent reason whatsoever, because you would have thought that if you actually had the guy, you'd want to have everybody really see it. You want to really have confirmation of it. You would have thought that. You'd want confirmation of it. But no, let's just chuck it out in the ocean. Oh, sorry, you can't check it now. So, And then Alan Parrott makes the point about $2 billion being also sent to American politicians to silence it, which of course we know. Okay, we know that, what is it? There's a handful of people. The CIA runs its own roster of congressmen. So you have a pretty clear cut, Ted Lieu, all these people, whatever. There is a really, 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 oh man, I had this from a client caller today. Throw this up there. Throw that out there. Okay. And we had from, how do I put this? Where was I? So we had this whole thing, the CIA is always trying to get involved with politics recently. That was a new thing, pretending that they're military people, right? Of course, even the military thing is hilarious as well. I'm a soldier and I'm here to represent the country. Okay, first off, I know I'm not supposed to say this as a civilian, but for all the people who actually really fought out there and fought in dangerous situations, I think a lot of us are getting pretty tired of random person in HR or in some complete or some, JAG lawyer. Nothing wrong with JAG, okay? Nothing wrong with being in HR in the military, but don't fucking go around and act like you're some sort of veteran. I'm a veteran. I served in Iraq. Yeah, you served in a fucking office. Okay? Do not act as if you were a combat infantryman. Do not do that shit. But they always do this. It's like they find all these people and they put them in and they promote them, right? And the CIA, same thing. It's like I served our country. Yeah, well you you served your country, right? You served your country in trying to increase heroin production in Taliban in Afghanistan with the Taliban. Yeah. You gave us a war to fight, so you served your country. Great job. So fuck these people. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. Fuck these people. Fuck them. They are the worst people. They're scum. And there's a segment of Congress that's like this. And then we have a solid 70% other part of Congress, which has been completely compromised. And they're not necessarily the worst people in the world, but they've been compromised. And, the mob, what is it? Giancarlo, the famous mob boss, talked about this. But, you would put people, you've seen it. You see it in The Godfather. They put the congressperson in some incriminating situation. They have it all recorded and they have blackmail on them. So then they offer him money to go along with their agenda. Or the alternative is that the stuff goes out, their life is destroyed. So there's a lot of people in politics. And I would literally say it goes something like 20% scum, 60% compromised, 20% actually integrity trying to fight for something. Yeah, everything is a rich man's trick. Phenomenal film. Really, it could talk more about the communists, but I understand the producer's sympathies, and he doesn't deny this stuff. He just doesn't focus on it, which is fine. The Epstein ruse, yeah. So this is a big thing. This is a big thing that's breaking right now about all this money being sent to Iran and about questioning whether or not bin Laden was even killed and what happened to SEAL Team 6. Why it was like the worst thing that ever happened in the history of the Navy SEALs. An entire Chinook helicopter, an old model for the best team. They got a very, very old model, which didn't have the proper, didn't have advanced radar tech and everything. They got a very, very old model Chinook, and their position was completely known, and they were killed, and there was no real investigation or retaliation into it. Okay, so hopefully this shit's coming out. Hopefully it's coming out. I think it is coming out. So now we have Trump ending the war in Afghanistan, Taliban support. Well, guys, okay, I'm going to just hit this thing. Do we think we'll see any major figures arrested anytime soon? There's going to be arrests. Okay, there's going to be arrests one way or another. And you can already see how much this information's been seeded just in the last 2 weeks. So much has been dropped in the public. I don't know whether or not it's going to be dropped before the election. Barr says it's not going to be dropped. Attorney General Barr says it's not going to be dropped before the election. And I think that I can understand some reasons for that. That perhaps it might seem a little bit too much like an attempt to prosecute your political opponents, will feed too much into some sort of civil war thing. Maybe the arrests have to happen when we collectively come up and say, hey, we've had enough. We want this stuff done. And so Barr has to be forced by the public to release the information. He has to be forced to make the arrest by a very angry population that demands justice. But there are other things that are going on too. I checked yesterday PredictIt, and I've been a big PredictIt person in the past. I've made good money on PredictIt. And I'm going to tell you guys why I'm not doing PredictIt this year. There's 2 reasons, okay? 2 reasons I'm not doing PredictIt this year. First reason is actually like very just personal, which is that I'm in the process. We bought our apartment in Poland, but now we're in the process of renovating it. And there's all these payment time schedules, and I'm doing fine with it. I've got it managed, but liquidity isn't really like, I have to pay attention to liquidity. And so if I put like $10,000 or something into the election, and who knows when I'm going to get that money back? Who knows what a clusterfuck it's going to be? Even though I'm confident I'll win on balance, first off, it will just put more stress on me, because what if I don't? What if there's that little chance that there's some fraud in the race and I lose money from that? So I don't have as much. There's a little bit more pressure on the time of me having funds, but that ties into the bigger thing, which is that I don't really feel as if. Let me actually put this differently. You guys know Magenta Pixie, right? I've repped her before. She's one of my faves. I think she's a very, very good channeler. I think that she's an extremely logical person. Well, it's the thing. It's free money because of Trump landslide. But what actually is true is that the cabal is going down. Okay, that is true. The cabal is going down, and that they're only able to, like, their time here is limited. Okay, time here is limited. Yeah, I mean, I can afford to lose it, but it's kind of like it's just a time crunch. Like, I don't want to have that stress. Like, we need to pay some vendor, and I don't have the liquidity on hand, because that was an issue before. But the cabal is going to lose. That is a higher dimensional truth. There's just nothing that's contradicting that. There's no timelines that contradict that. But the pathway to that, there's still possibilities. There's, I think, a high likelihood that Trump's going to win a landslide election. And if I had that liquidity and I could just play around with it and it would be like whatever to me, then I would throw easily 10, 15,000 on that. Just because, like, as you said, free money, and I feel like it would go well. But here's the thing. There is so much attempted fraud going on with this election. Okay, I learned in 2018 where I ended up losing some money. I didn't lose a lot, but I lost some money in the end when I thought I was going to win. And up until like 5 days after the election, I was winning. I was going to make a couple $1,000s, and I ended up losing about like a couple thousand, because all these little races just flipped because of fraud. And so while I trust the outcome, I don't trust the process. I don't trust the fact that, and this brings us to another thing. So like the FBI and CISIA have both talked about how there's like the new voting system has been hacked. I don't necessarily think that there's a lot of integrity to this election in the current status, which is why I'm not putting money in, because I don't know if what I'm putting money towards is going to be honored. I don't know if that election that would have been a win is going to be stolen. Now, does Trump ultimately come out of it? Yes, I believe that. That's a very, very high likelihood. And also, in the very, very, very limited likelihood that he doesn't win the election, cabal still goes because there's too many awakened individuals. And let's be real here, we're not going to go down without a fight. We're not going to go down without a fight. It's not going to happen. New World Order timeline's not going to happen, but we could have a mess on our hands. But Trump winning, Trump staying as president, is something I think is most likely to occur, but I don't understand how that sausage is made because there's an enormous amount of uncertainty with this election. The integrity of this election is going to be very, very suspect. And I don't want to put money towards something where I don't know what's going to be honored and what isn't going to be honored. Make sense? So you guys do what you want to do, and I love it. I kind of wish I was still in the game because it adds a little bit of extra flavor on election night. But I'm not feeling like I don't trust the 3D. I trust the 5D. I don't trust the 3D in the short term, to put it that way. Which brings me to another point I really wanted to make, and I have mentioned some of these things in the past, in terms of like people on the left and how they've been manipulated, and how actually for a very long period of time they were on maybe more of the correct side in a lot of ways, or at least you could say parts of the left were. Parts of the left and parts of the right, right? It's always been a bit of a mix, but the propaganda shifted back and forth. But I wanted to say this stuff because what's going on here is that you have all these people who have, like, the protest, like all the stuff, Black Lives Matter, LGBT, all of this stuff. They're caught in programs from legitimate desire to raise in consciousness, okay? They want to move their consciousness up, but they've been trapped. And I think Magenta talked about this. I think it was her, about like this being like a false light or a false paradigm. And that this is what the cabal does because they're service to self. They see what goes on. They see where consciousness is going, and they can't stop that, but they can redirect it. And so what they do is they create psychological programs to harvest people's 4D, right? Psychological programs, which is 4D. They create these things to harvest people's emotions. So rather than have people come up and say, I'm declaring their sovereignty as individuals, declaring their rights, what happens is that they get caught into a distortion. They get caught in a distortion trap. And it's very sad because this is one of, and I think a lot of people in the higher consciousness realm have been completely grabbed by it. And you know that they really care about energy, they care about positive stuff, but they've become completely trapped in a false light. That's what's happening. It's false light. And so we need to be, as good as we can be to them and hope that they wake up. There's a lot of really interesting stuff with this. We had the distorted masculine very much dominating society. Now we have the distorted feminine. How would one realize who they are? I think that I don't think that anybody's gonna wake up. I don't think anybody's gonna wake up just from a random conversation. It's always about seeding the information for people and having them kind of come to these conclusions on their own, right? Come to a realization. But I think that the point that you can make, this is why it's actually also important. You have a bunch of, I guess you could call them alt-right, or, you could say like hardcore nationalists. I wouldn't, abuse them necessarily and say that they're, white nationalist or whatever, but people who are certainly more on the radical side of the right. Okay. They get really upset when Trump, because Trump has put a lot of effort into emphasizing minorities, particularly African Americans. And to them, on a 3D kind of lower 4D level, this doesn't make any sense because it's like, well, they're not going to vote for you, dude. Why are you supporting people who are not going to vote for you? But what he's actually trying to do is he's trying to hold space. He's trying to hold a field for them and to not give them anything that's going to feed the program. So people who are not in the program don't need to be paced in the same way. I think it's important to understand this. They don't need to be paced in the same way unless you're a fucking child and you're like, man, Trump's not talking about me and my needs. It's like they are, and they are. A lot of them are fucking children. I prefer a bigger grand strategy perspective on this stuff. It's like, yeah, like, we know that Trump is caring about heritage America. Okay, we know that. Like, I don't need him to go out there and make stupid statements that are going to help the opposition feed into their programs. Like, why? Like, but you need him to do it because it makes you feel good about yourself. A lot of them actually, like, Nicholas Fuentes, like, are Chinese agents, right? And Loki did a good job of, and he's so ahead of the curve, man. I mean, I kept a very open mind about it, but now it seems pretty clear cut that he was. I mean, his father's connections to factories in China. Um, it's very interesting, very interesting. And you can judge them by how they try to manipulate you and have you go like, don't vote for Trump, don't support him. He doesn't have your best interest at heart. Vote for Andrew Yang, right? Vote for Andrew Yang instead. But I don't want to get off topic with this stuff. The point here is that Trump is trying to hold space for people. And I do think that blacks are turning out en masse for Trump. Now, maybe this only ends up being like 20%, maybe 25%. Okay. That automatically wins Trump the election, first off. So, from a strategy perspective, smart. But also, he has been creating a space that is allowing some black people to wake up. He's creating a space that's allowing them to do it. And it'll make it easier for when the moment comes for a lot of them. They're like, wait a minute, why am I so opposed to this person? Why do I hate this person? And they can wake up from the program that's been harvesting them. You can't be immature about this stuff. You have to be really open with it. And so I think you have to acknowledge for these people, you have to acknowledge their pain points because the pain point is where the program started to work. So anybody who tries to just like dismiss it, they surrender they surrender almost all of them to the program. Only a handful are going to wake up in spite of the other people still crapping on them because then they have nowhere to go. Okay. So you create this space for them to wake up from the program. Yeah, they have an enormous amount of trauma. I mean, I just wish white people understood this more. It doesn't mean that like that's like my whole thing is like, let's, appease black people's egos. It's not my thing, right? I don't do that. I don't appease anybody's ego. But I mean, white people do need to understand the trauma in the black community. Just need to understand it. Doesn't mean that you have to like bend over backwards around it, but you have to have compassion. You have to have empathy. You have to understand like why the programs work. They work because of the pain is being played on. Now, where this goes is that you acknowledge the pain for these individuals have, and then I think like the really, I think it's important at that point to, like, a lot aren't going to get it, but you can feel when someone's energy isn't really good. And so if people have a real understanding of energy, for a lot of like regular people this won't work, but for like the really higher like people who in every other aspect of their life, like, I've been talking to a client about this who's a white guy dating a black girl and things are falling apart because of Trump, right? Things are falling apart because of Trump. Because of Trump. I mean, because of her program that she has around Trump. And the issue here is like she's in many ways such like a high vibration person, super warm and loving, but she has this thing and it's difficult to deal with. It's really difficult to deal with, but what do you got to do? I think you have to call out the negative energy. You have to call out the negative energy and just say, look, hey, it's like, you can come to this on your own timeline, but I just want you to know, I want you to see that you're bringing a lot of like fear and negative energy towards me. And just to point that out, to bring their awareness to it, and then just give them space to see if they can see it. There's a girl I know who's very like, you would consider her to be like a star seed, right? But she's totally in a program, and her energy is so bad now. Her energy has become so bad, and I think I'm gonna have to have a conversation with her because I'm very close to her. Just like, hey, like, what the fuck is like? I mean, I'm not gonna say it like that, but like, we talk about this stuff. Like, pay attention to your energy. You are in such a fear state right now. Is that high vibration? It's kind of, you pointed out. I always try to catch myself whenever I fall into fear, whenever I fall into some sort of like anger state where I want to like get dragged into the polarity. So anyway, it'll be interesting. So let's move away from some of the esoteric stuff a little bit. Um, you know, well, I guess we could talk a little bit more. Now, I don't want to. I think it's enough esoteric for this time. We can always talk about some of these things later. But I do think in the new world, there's been a lot of talk about hierarchy, and is hierarchy going to be coming back? And I don't really feel that hierarchy is coming back. I think that we have to stand as sovereign individuals. And the big factor here is consciousness level, right? Hierarchy. Consciousness levels, right? If we get our consciousness up high enough, we don't need hierarchy, because we can interpret from each other truth much more from our perspectives. I mean, this is the same thing with governmental systems, right? Like, when you go to a democracy, when the population is not at a high enough consciousness, it falls apart. But you could say that democracy for high consciousness individuals is the only form of government that can possibly work. What do I think about patchwork society? I do think that we're going to be entering an age of iteration, and that most likely in the next year, we're going to be able to start to create a new world, create that new consciousness, and we're going to be building it in our separate little sectors. People call it bubbles of heaven. But I think that some people still think in old paradigms, like someone's going to have the power, someone else isn't. And the power, guys, the power comes down to your level of consciousness. That's what it comes down to. That's why saints and whatnot could never be conquered. They could kill them, it didn't matter. There is a really, really serious spiritual consciousness, and that the more that you bring that to the table, and I think that as more and more people bring that to the table, they manifest a different world. There's even a lot of talk in esoteric circles about the configuration of the earth changing as our consciousness changes. And this is a little bit out of my pay grade. Magenta talks about it like the iron core turned into a diamond core, and that's a reflection of the changing of the consciousness, that the laws of physics actually change as the consciousness changes, and that Newtonian physics start to shift. I don't know. I don't know to what extent that's true. I don't know to what extent it's true on a metaphorical level versus a physical level. I don't know. But if consciousness shapes your reality, if our consciousness jumps to a certain level, then you could perhaps understand that some aspects of physics might change. Kind of seems to me, though, with quantum mechanics, that's already built in. So, I don't know. We're definitely in Sophia would tell me, times of prophecy. We're in times of prophecy. But yeah, I do think with patchwork consciousness, I think that's Paul's way of describing it, and I love it. But he got into some spats with people about hierarchy recently, and I think he's right. I think hierarchy is just, the man's leadership in a family is based on the fact that the man has the connection to truth. And that's what gives him that authority. But sort of just demands of roles. Like fixed roles are just not going to be working. They're not going to be working in the same way. Um, and I think people who think that we're going to go back to that are sorely mistaken. The energy does not support at all a distorted masculine returning into any sort of power. That is like so outside of the realm of any possible future. The distorted feminine, which we have in ascendance, which we have in dominance at the moment, um, they have a higher chance of controlling things than the distorted masculine. Like, we are much more likely to have some Hillary Clinton bitch, Kamala Harris sort of leader than we are some sort of truly unintegrated strongman. It's just not. It's not where we're at energetically. But yeah, it's interesting about the DNA activation and the Schumann resonance. Yeah, people have seen two different movies playing out at the same time, and people talk about this as the timeline shift. And some people talk about how this means a different Earth. People actually jump to a different Earth that goes on a different timeline. Guys, it's very, very complicated shit. It's very, very complicated shit. So let's move it down from the 5D to some more 3D stuff. Close it out with some 3D. So we have Hunter Biden leveraging Burisma to make some money, right? Leveraging his connections with dad to make some bucks on Burisma. And now you see Twitter, all the social media is trying to censor it. Like, oh, no, you're not supposed to look at this. This is bad. Don't look at it. This information could be dangerous. Information could be dangerous. And then we have the stuff with Benghazi, is what happened in Benghazi coming out. We've got Biden talking about running for the Senate. Good old Joe Biden. How many times has he done that? It's a joke, man. It's such a fucking joke. And then and actually some people have talked about with like Pelosi with the 25th Amendment, that actually the 25th Amendment stuff was about Joe Biden rather than was about Trump, which makes a little bit more sense, I guess, but that's not how they positioned it. Because you have this whole thing like, okay, Joe, how do I put this? It's like 25th Amendment, we have to check to see if we can remove the president, right? And they want to have this committee on removing the president. That was all directed towards Trump. But maybe they're trying to bring it into people's consciousness in the sense that, well, we can remove Biden and put Kamala Harris in here. I agree. I mean, an amazing healthcare plan and dissolving big tech before election day would be wonderful. It's still not really clear that he has the support in Congress for it. I mean, Congress, the Republicans in the Senate are not backing the stimulus package because a lot of them are still compromised. And I don't know if that's the main reason for it or what. We have all these moves and counter moves. But it's people who keep saying, when we talk about how like Patriots in control, it means the Patriots understand the timeline and they understand how to play their cards, but we haven't played out the timeline yet. We have not played out the timeline yet. And so we're still in a fight, guys. We're still in a fight. But the energy has gotten a lot better. I mean, the energy has improved so much over the last week. It just keeps getting better and better. Yeah, that's the thing. People say if the Republicans get rid of Trump, they can get lobbyist money again. And that may be what they intend with this. But guys, it's just that, like, we can't go back to that. People like talking about Joe Biden and supporting Joe Biden and Trump sucks. Like, whatever. That's like boring. It's like expected. What actually like drives me crazy is people who don't fall into that stuff, who are like sane, regular people who talk as if politics are going to somehow return to what they were like before. People who say like, well, Trump's going to lose, and then they're going to have this other, it's just going to be back to like the business class Republicans who are going to come in. Like, that's not going to happen. The energy doesn't support any of that. The energy didn't even support it before, which is why we got here. There's no way after Trump has helped to awaken all these people's. Yeah, it's like the ship has sailed. How on earth are we going to go back to like two-party, captured system? It's not going to happen. There's a 0% chance that's going to happen. It's really like worst case scenario, we got to fight. That's it. That's it. Worst case scenario, and it's a super small percentage. So don't even focus on it. Just be aware of it. Don't even focus on it. It's so far off. But there's no going backwards, guys. There's no going backwards. Yeah, globalism's done. They're running out of people to manipulate. So it's just a matter of time. So last couple of things here. There was that a little couple notes here I had here. Pence's fly emerged out of nowhere. People talked about this with the debate. Was the fly a psyop to distract people from Kamala's bad debate performance? Because people were doing like slow motion and they didn't see the fly. I don't know if that's true or not. Could be. People have also talked about the fly meaning something else, like they're clones, not humans. There's some people on the right, more in like a subsection of the Q movement, has talked about Pence as being connected to pedophilia rings in Indiana. I don't know about that stuff. I don't know about it. I don't consider myself a believer of that, but I keep an open mind. I just haven't heard anybody actually give me any. I haven't heard anybody say anything. The only thing that people really seem to have is a couple of cases that happened in Indiana, maybe. And then the fact that Pence received some piece of paper at Bush Sr.'s funeral. And so people have made this big association between that because Obama also got one and Bush also got one. Yeah, I just think that people should be more cautious with this stuff, but whatever, Yeah, I guess that their point is that's all fake, right? That Pence is actually like a Satanist and only pretends to be pious. And sorry guys, I don't really get that. I don't really get it. But people, and then you have the whole thing like, is it a different Pence? You gotta be really careful with some of these things. And actually, a thought just came to me right now. So it's not polished. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I wonder if there's some I don't know. I was just thinking, is there something to do with how people look maybe a little bit different? Is that like a timeline thing? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, speaking of Pence, he mentioned at the debate Kamala's incarceration rate as prosecutor, that she sent 19 times more blacks to prison for nonviolent drug offenses. Yep, pretty big point. Hey, one thing I forgot to mention last time is the Quantum Coordination Office that Trump has instituted. What does that mean? People are going to have to stop taking us so people are going to have to stop thinking that we're crazy at a certain point. Because all this stuff, even if like there are some details that are incorrect, like we've been talking about the like Project Looking Glass and quantum tech, Quantum Coordination Office, very interesting. There's all the stuff with the Denver shooter, that he wasn't actually employed by security. Yep. Antifa guy. Whatevs. Mail dump with mail ballots. Go figure. Hey, here's an interesting one. We got Clinton in the I don't know why I didn't see this earlier, but in Clinton emails requesting documents about the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh and buried Nephilim. Okay, she wants to know about the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh that was discovered, and where the Nephilim are buried. Try to have some normie who won't consider these things make some sense of that. Eventually, you have to go into these alternative history routes. You just have to do it. And I think people, if they're really honest, they just like I want to emphasize that people shouldn't really try to cling on to like I got the right thing. I figured it all out. I think it's very good just to poke holes, right? To know that hey, this doesn't make sense. Let's just like say it doesn't make sense that there are all these statues on Easter Island, right? It's a random island in the Pacific Ocean. That there are some really, really ornately carved statues that the locals don't really have much of a recollection of. They worship, and that they're all over the place. It doesn't make sense that you have these, Machu Picchu all the way up, like there's pyramids, right? Stuff doesn't make sense. So let's just keep an open mind. Like I listen to so much crazy shit, guys. For you. I do it for you guys. Listen to so much crazy shit. And then we have this stuff like people who want to really understand the world and frankly control it do the same thing. Clinton requests documents related to Gilgamesh's resurrection chamber, okay, a Sumerian god. Gilgamesh's resurrection chamber and buried Nephilim, all right? So let's like not pretend that the elite thinks this stuff is crazy. All right. We got Trump talking about how he's permanently cured of COVID. I love this shit. They censored him, but I love it. Yeah, I mean Abrahamic religions are a part of the picture, but it's good to you have to look at across culture. I think that you find a lot more things. Hey, there's an interesting thing here. Those with COVID, 70.6% wore mask, 3.9% never wore them. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't know that I trust this data. I think we have to be cautious of things that really confirm our beliefs so strongly. And I don't know that poor mask sanitation is a good enough reason to explain this away. But guys, fear consciousness definitely lowers your immune system in a big way. Like, I have to tell you that since I jumped into like out of the fear paradigm, I've never gotten sick. I've had like maybe 2 moments where I had a fever for less than 24 hours, like a low fever, like 99, 100. I would be able to get into a restaurant. It's really, and I'm not saying that I'm typical, right? Whatever. Shadow work is essential. Vitamin D is essential. But I just want to make the point here that our immune system is not like every single thing hits on multiple levels. So we have our immune system here. We look at it as like a microbiological thing, and that's a 3rd dimensional iteration of it. But it also exists on a 4th dimensional and a 5th dimensional level. So our energy field on the 4th dimensional level, if our energy field's depleted, then that allows things to enter into our body. If we are not connected to 5D, we're not connected to a higher level of immunity that exists collectively. That something enters into the dimension, and as a unity consciousness, we're able to deal with it. I know this stuff sounds like nuts. Anybody who just jumps in right now is gonna be like, "What the fuck is this guy who's drinking sherry talking about?" But it's true. When I more and more with my coaching stuff with guys, okay, I deal with stuff tactically. Okay, you should have approached it this way. This was the wrong thing to do. Is this the right intention when you're going into the interaction? Oh, what's your mindset? What are your beliefs? Like going in through all this stuff. And more, it's like, are you being attacked by astral entities? What's your energetic field? It's dealing with those things. Like I'm attacking people's problems across dimensions. Because it's almost universal that a guy who's trying to break out of a bad situation starts to have like, especially if he's like a higher energy individual, starts to have all sorts of shit attack him. He'll have all sorts of problems occur. Maybe he has night terrors. Yeah, man, go get some sleep. Honestly, if you ever find yourself getting even remotely sick, put on a couple layers of clothes and go sleep. And it'll be gone. Don't do anything else. Don't take any medication. Just drink some water. You can have some vitamin C and zinc, I guess. But like literally just sweat it out. It'll be gone so fast. American Christianity did not, Alan. Especially the Protestant branches. Pentecostals do a little bit better job, but I think that they actually can often get seduced by the demons because they're so pulled into the speaking in tongues. The Catholics remain, I don't have enough familiarity with Orthodoxy, but the Catholics remain the best ones I've seen at dealing with exorcisms because they understand the rituals. The Protestants got rid of ritualism, and so they abandoned the spiritual plane. That's why Protestantism, I'm a Protestant and I see a lot of value in the logical doctrine, but Protestantism dropped out of 5D. Like the Catholics span the spectrum. You have Satanists, like hardcore Satanists, and you have hardcore saints. The Protestants just like dropped a level beneath it. They got too much encompassed with reason, and that was a big trap for them. But yeah, 70.6% of people who with COVID wore a mask. 3.9% never wore them. It's kind of strange. Last stuff here. Biden talking about tapping Cuomo for Attorney General. Go ahead and do it, you retard. I mean, honestly, what a dumb decision. Maybe he'll lose New York if he does it. I'm serious. People hate. I know people who are still thinking about voting for Biden, but they hate Cuomo so much. They hate Cuomo so much. Like, I've told them that, and they just went silent. I'm like, oh yeah, but, Biden's talking about making Cuomo Attorney General. Like, Cuomo's a fascist. Like, well, he is. Yeah, he is a fascist. I'm gonna close this with the last thing here. We didn't talk about today because we got that China dam. You guys heard about Paul Ferber is apparently going to the Valley. He's apparently going to the Valley of the Moon in South Africa, where allegedly Trump's cure came from. And I guess we're going to see what happens with that. I mean, guys, we can certainly say that no matter what the fuck is going on here, at least it's not boring. Who knows what's going on here? Well, we're going to see what Paul tells us about the Valley of the Moon. As for this last question here, will Biden make it to the election? I don't know. There's definitely a timeline that has been noted that he doesn't make it to the election or that he gets removed. They're in a bad position, guys. I think, if we look at this as the chess analogy, a big piece was taken earlier this month. Like, I think their queen was taken, frankly. And they're dealing with what they've got, but we're getting closer to the end game. So just a couple more months. We're over halfway through the worst of it. But I appreciate all of you tuning in as usual. We're going to do another one next week. We're going to make sure we have at least one every week of these, okay? The dating relationship Periscope is going to be about every other, but a lot of hot stuff going on, all right? See you guys.